pleased to introduce Olivia Jersick from the Hayter Clinic, Queensland. Topic is the fears of a digital detox in an always online world. Please join me in making Olivia welcome.
Thanks, April. We can skip past that one. All right, so today I just want to acknowledge, first of all, and pay my respects to the traditional owners, who are the Yugambeh people of the lands and waters that we gather upon today. I also acknowledge the many Aboriginal people from other regions, as well as Torres Strait and South Sea Islander people who now live in the local area. So today we really want to run you through understanding how digital applications can activate addictive behaviours. We want to recognise the relationship between digital overuse as well as the experience of distress, anxiety, loneliness, emotion dysregulation, and the overlap between behavioural addictions and substance use disorders. And lastly, identifying the therapeutic value of actually going through a digital detox and an intentional disconnection in recovery. So for the first time in human history, we carry a casino, a dating service, a gaming arcade, a shopping centre, and a global audience in our pocket 24 hours a day. Now, I'm not here to demonise technology. Technology connects us, it educates us, and it supports us. But as clinicians, researchers, and human beings, we also need to ask the question, what happens when connection becomes compulsion? To understand why these behaviours can become so compelling and in some cases problematic, we need to look at how these platforms are designed to hold attention and shape behaviour. So I want to do a quick show of hands in the room. How many of you checked your phone within 10 minutes of waking up today? Wow. I'd have to say that looks like 98% of you, if not 100. Now, how many of you have ever opened up social media just for 1 minute and then ended up losing half an hour? Okay, I reckon that's about 75% in the room. And how many of you actually feel a sense of discomfort when you leave your phone in another room? Yep, I reckon about 40% of you there. I don't know, are we all being honest? Now look, digital addictions don't look like addiction at first. They look quite normal, productive, social, even necessary. But whether it's social media, gaming, gambling, pornography, or dating apps, the constant stream of content consumption and validation-seeking behaviours exploit many of the same mechanisms that we see in alcohol and substance dependence. We see things like dopamine reward pathways, escapism, emotion regulation, craving and compulsion, withdrawal-like symptoms, as well as a loss of control. And much like alcohol and other drugs, the issue isn't actually with the technology itself. The issue is the relationship that we've developed with it. So these platforms are not neutral environments. They are engineered systems designed to capture, extend, and monetize our attention. Their effectiveness lies in a set of highly consistent psychological mechanisms that influence behaviour beneath conscious awareness. Over time, these mechanisms shape how we seek reward, process social feedback, and regulate emotion. And there's several core themes that are adopted by these modern digital platforms that make them so compelling and continue to draw people in. Firstly, instant gratification. The likes, the wins, the matches, the endless new content, all gearing our brain toward reduced distress tolerance, reduced patience, and constant stimulation seeking. Likes are used as social currency, followers or matches are perceived as value, and whilst we're really only previewing everyone's highlight reels, we've inadvertently created a comparison culture online. Now, these are all reinforced through algorithms to maximise user engagement, to monetize attention, and the emotional activation in keeping its users hanging on. Sound familiar? I look around this room today and I see a wild array of talented, intelligent, and what I can only assume as being authentic and self-aware individuals. Some of you are in attendance and listening intently from a professional or clinical perspective, others through lived experience, and some of you will have both. So let me pause for a moment to ask, if every platform you use to seek validation or connection disappeared tomorrow, what parts of your identity would still feel stable and intact? I want you to reflect on this based on the person you are today. But I also want you to think of this perhaps from the lens of your past self, your future self, or maybe the client that's actually sitting in front of you. A client seen in treatment might present with sleep disturbances, a reduced attention span, relationship strain, or a fragile sense of self. And at what point does one stop to consider that these symptoms could be a direct reflection of their relationship with digital platforms? I wonder, how many times have you considered that this is the development of a modern digital addiction? Many clients describe never feeling truly alone anymore, yet simultaneously feeling profoundly disconnected. And this echoes the work of Johan Hari, who we heard on day one speaking extensively about the relationship between addiction and disconnection. So let's explore, how is this actually playing out here in Australia today? So it's quite concerning, the data and what has emerged. We know that with usage of social media, around 78% of Australians are actively using social media, and we're spending close to 2 hours a day on that. eSafety research has found that 96% of Australian children between the age of 10 and 15 use social media. And can I tell you, the ban for 16 and unders has not solved that problem. They still have access. If we look at gambling, we heard it again yesterday. Australians are ranking first worldwide for gambling, with a rapid growth in online gambling specifically. It's jumped from 8% in 2017 to 56% in the past 12 months. Levels of risky gambling have increased from 13.7% in 2024 to 19.4% last year. And online gambling has been found to be linked towards higher levels of distress and loneliness. Now, this one I'm sure we all see occasionally in treatment. Dating apps. Unsurprisingly, Tinder is leading the charge. Most popular with 25 to 34-year-olds being over 50% of their market, with 31% being in the 18 to 24-year-old bracket. Now, the Australian dating app market is actually valued at roughly $316.4 million this year, with a compound annual growth rate of 4.4% in the last 5 years. Let that sink in. Roughly 1 in 8 users of dating apps have been asked to provide inappropriate, sexualized images, and these have often involved minors. And again, like gambling, increased frequency and duration of use of dating apps are associated with higher levels of psychological distress and depression. And our research here in Australia has shown a significant correlation between swiping-based dating app usage and poor mental health. So users are 2.5 times more likely to experience psychological distress and twice as likely to report depression compared to those who don't use it. A 2025 review found that over 85% of studies link app usage to negative body image, whilst nearly half showed negative effects on overall mental health. So let's have a look at that a bit further. What that data begins to highlight is not just the scale of digital engagement, but the psychological architecture underpinning it. The mental health impacts associated with these platforms do not emerge in isolation. Rather, they're shaped by a combination of behavioural reinforcement systems, social comparison processes, and altered reward pathways that collectively influence mood, self-perception, and interpersonal functioning. When instant feedback loops, curated identities, and constant availability of social validation combine, it becomes clearer how these environments can progressively shape emotion regulation, attachment patterns, and cognitive well-being. In this context, the following factors outline some of the key mechanisms through which modern digital platforms might contribute to psychological distress and reduced mental well-being. So firstly, we've got rejection and ghosting, a term that would have once been unfamiliar to us all. So the low commitment nature of apps leads to higher rates of rejection and ghosting, reducing users' self-esteem. Being swiped out. The overwhelming choice of partners and focus on appearance can lead to feelings of anxiety, loneliness, as well as body dissatisfaction. This swiping mechanism also encourages treating people as being disposable. This results in poorer body image, reduced self-worth, and that sits alongside the pressures of how we as individuals present ourselves to the world. There's constant comparison. Regular exposure to these curated profiles often result in lower life satisfaction and higher stress due to these constant inadequacy loops. Over time, these environments begin shaping not only behaviour, but identity, attachment, as well as emotional resilience. What we increasingly see is not simply excessive screen use, but individuals whose self-worth, emotion regulation, and sense of belonging have become deeply intertwined with digital feedback systems. So, as part of our program at Hayter Clinic Queensland, we have been delivering residential addiction treatment services for 10 years now. And that's with one constant, a no electronic policy. Wild. This has really been challenged over the years with advocacy for some tech time, but to this day, this policy remains unchanged. Removing access to these devices during inpatient treatment services, as well as the digital platforms, allows for removal from digital overload, reduced stimulation, reduced external distractions, or mindless doom scrolling and better regulation of the nervous system. What becomes increasingly apparent in treatment is that many people are not simply attached to devices. They are attached to what those devices help them avoid. When screens are removed, there is often an initial period of discomfort, boredom, restlessness, anxiety, silence, fear of missing out, fear of irrelevance, and for some, it's a massive confrontation with thoughts or emotions that have long been numbed through constant stimulation. In many ways, digital detox can mirror the psychological and behavioural signs of early substance withdrawal. People often rediscover how difficult it has become to simply sit still, to tolerate discomfort, maintain attention, or be alone with their thoughts. Yet beyond that discomfort, something important begins to emerge. For many people, the absence of screens initially creates anxiety and then eventually creates clarity. Individuals might experience improved sleep, emotional presence, deeper conversations, increased distress tolerance, clearer thinking, reconnection with their identity, and a renewed capacity for genuine human connection. What initially feels like deprivation can eventually become relief. There's peace in that silence. Technology is not the enemy. Disconnection is. The challenge of modern addiction is not simply substances anymore. It's distraction. It's overstimulation. It is the outsourcing of identity, connection, and self-worth to algorithms that were designed to keep us consuming. Perhaps recovery in the digital age is not about rejecting technology, but simply learning how to be human again with it. Thank you.
Fantastic. It's not as simple as no phones versus phones, technology versus being human. Do we have any questions? We have got time for a few questions, so pop your hand up. We'll go here first.
Thank you. Such an interesting presentation. My question was around the idea that, there's no phones for the entire time in treatment and then people have to go back out into the world. Do you do anything as part of your treatment program around preparing people for that aspect of going back out into the world?
Yeah, and I suppose that's the benefit of our program is that we are working with people long term. So generally people are with us for a 12-week period. Now in that time period, they do become eligible for things like having a day leave or having a weekend leave where they're leaving the inpatient treatment setting. During those leave periods, they are entitled to have their phones back. So during that time when they're leaving, we're encouraging them to consider things like, what apps do you have on your phone currently? Are there things that you do need to disconnect from? It's also considering things like, is what's on that phone serving you today in your recovery? And I think the flip side of that too is that we work with the families. So often it's about educating and informing the families too and their loved ones about, when you take your loved one out for leave that day, what boundaries are you setting with them? They're getting their phone back for the first time in 4 weeks. Are you spending that day out with them whilst they're on their phone, or are you spending that day out with them connecting? So it's not just working with the individual, but also their support network to help them really consider what that looks like. Yeah.
Thank you for a great presentation. I was just wondering if you had any comments around ADHD and how that kind of is a coexisting disorder with lots of substance addictions, but also kind of in the context of this?
Yeah, look, it's I mean, that's a whole other talk in itself, right? But yes, absolutely. We see quite a significant proportion of our population also have a co-occurring diagnosis of ADHD. Obviously with that, yeah, there's those mechanisms that are involved with that, which is that instant gratification, that seeking that stimulation, that constant being on, right, and juggling. So yeah, without probably standing up here and telling you, talking for another 30 minutes, maybe we can catch up afterwards and have a chat.
That's a great one for the break.
Yeah.
We are at time. Thank you so
Amazing.
much.
Thank you.